Good afternoon, everybody, evening, morning, wherever you are in the world. This is Allie at Heart and Soul Connected, and I'm going to be talking today about the Hanged Man, card 12 of the Major Arcana, in an archetypal way. I hope all of you are enjoying your holiday weekend. If you are celebrating holiday, there's a lot going on. There's Ramadan, there's Passover, and there's Easter. So we've got a lot of religious uh, celebrations coming up. And I wish you all well. And if you're not, just enjoy your day, enjoy your time. So, excuse me, I've been working on this for a couple of days and it's extremely long. And I'm trying to cull it out so that it doesn't become too long. But I like to, leave it fairly short just to keep the momentum going. So today, the Hanged Man is what I am doing. This is the Hanged Man. It is card 12. The Hanged Man is hanging by his toe, upside down, and from the tree of life. And we're all anxious many times to turn this over to feel more comfortable with it because we don't like seeing anybody on their particular heads. But think about yoga. Think about blood rushing to the head. There's a lot of information in here, and I want you to feel comfortable with it. If we do it this way, we will notice that this is a sort of a T configuration and a 4 configuration. I want you to think about that. That's going to be important. All right. So this card was originally called the Trader, only it's not like in a trade, but a traitor, Traitor, someone who has um, betrayed their country or their party or their family, or mostly I think it's country. It has very historical origins, starting in Renaissance Italy, and it was a punishment to hang a person by one foot after their execution in order to be sort of hung out to dry, so to speak. Um, if you are familiar with World War II imagery, you will notice that Mussolini and his mistress were hung in this fashion after being executed after around World War II times, and you can see the picture if you Google it. It's Mussolini. He was already killed, but they hung him up for everybody to see, and his mistress as well. Um, Often we will see in some cards that money is falling out of the pockets of the hanged man, not necessarily in the Rider Waite deck, but you will see it in some. So it indicates suffering, loss, particularly loss of money. It could be a sacrifice that was made for spiritual gain, or it could be a traitorous relationship with an affiliation. And of course, since the idea came out of Renaissance Italy, and Mussolini was Italian, that's why they hung him the way they did. Um, Many times, uh, this depiction of further loss or just the coins falling out of the man's pockets show that there is also a loss of position, a wealth position, or even a position, a title. And that is why this is seen this way. Um, and there are a lot of mistaken mistaken reasons why the hanged man might be considered to be hung out. The first one I want to think about would be Socrates back in the day was a brilliant man who shared his wisdom with the youth of Athens at the time, and he was criticized and condemned by the parents of the young men because they said that they were making their sons too volatile and too open minded and so on. So they decided to cast him away as a traitor and make him leave the city. And while he didn't choose to do that, he did choose to take hemlock or a poison at the time in order to die, because he didn't want to live if he couldn't live in his city. But once again, this was a false sense of traitorship. The other more pertinent traitor could be seen as Jesus, who was crucified on the cross and hung. There are other people that were hung upside down on the cross. But you'll notice this is a T. This is a cross. This is, maybe you don't see what's up here, but this is a form of crucifixion, even though the person that's being hung up is not necessarily dead, okay, in this particular depiction. You'll also notice the enlightenment going on around their head. Very important, because this is bringing them what they need in order to move on from this experience. Artists and writers and psychologists are often drawn to this card. The crossed leg in yoga, upside down, is a reversal in attitude and spiritual awakening. The T also responds to the word Tao in Greek, T-A-U, and lies halfway between 1 and 21, so it's halfway the world. 12 and then 21 reversed is the same number. So this person on their journey is halfway through the major arcana. It is also a reminder that life is a process rather than a moment. We have lots and lots of moments that take up our time, but in order to make those moments work for us, we have to go through a certain process. So this is a process, and that's a reminder for anybody that this one day, this one time, this one moment doesn't have to be the moment that defines them. The stage can only be maintained, this way of sitting with the arms behind the back, by drawing from society. He's on the tree of life, and the symbolism affects us because it shows us peace and understanding. He's not struggling. He's accepted his fate. He's of course, we can't see that anyway, but it's not a sign of struggle. In fact, it's even more evident because of the sun around him, or the enlightenment, the light around him. He's being enlightened. Okay. The ego sees surrender as death in some ways, but he's not being emotional in this card. He is merely absent, sort of in a meditative state, turned within, and notice the light. The magician has brought the power of the wand in the wood forward, and is reflecting enlightenment and calm. It's a message of independence for any of us who are feeling like we need our own independence, even if others think we have us backwards. If they believe, oh, you're a nonconformist, you don't know what you're talking about. We become deeply connected to life, but he's in the grasp of fate. So whatever's happening to him, he knows is temporary, but it's however fate is going to meet this out. We want to fix his image, like I said, to be right side up, because we don't like this. This is just too uncomfortable for us. We would rather see him, up turned up. The hanging is not a cause of death. It is public ridicule, censure, and so on that this is indicating. He's not dying here. He's being ridiculed. He's being censured. He's being made to stay in a very suspended state. The universe, or the inverse hanging, was called, the way that he's hung is called a baffling at the time, during the medieval times. Now we say that to baffle somebody is to confuse them or thwart them or frustrate them. This is a baffling. This does confuse him. He's upside down. It probably does frustrate him. He's being hung by his toe. And it is very, you feel very thwarted when you're in this position. But it's a reminder that God or the gods despise hubris or pride. We talked about that when we talked about Oedipus. This is a kind of retribution, being better than Mother Nature, as only human nature is an upset of the balance and becomes suspended by life and death. This man is suspended between life and death. It's like a kind of time in the forest where a young man might go out or a young woman might go out to do a vision quest. And it has to be done alone and hoping to return with his center and reborn. It is a rite of initiation. This may not be a rite that we all like, but it is a way of putting us in a suspended state in order to find out whether or not this rite, R-I-T-E, is correct for us. As we've seen, a person in opposition to the collective viewpoint looks like a traitor to the establishment. We've seen that in the 60s with the hippies, all the protesting of the war. We've seen that in Black Lives Matter protests. We've seen a lot of people believe that if you don't believe the way I do, then you are a traitor to the cause. You are a nonconformist. You don't know what the rules are. You're not acting on the rules. A lot of people are very uncomfortable with that. It demands that we sacrifice and use a lot of our courage because it can happen any time in our lives. The hangman is a victim of his fate, but does not have the ability to accept his fate and puzzle out the meaning because he's left upside down. We must open up our doors of perception to experience our own spiritual growth and not be considered to be a victim. He doesn't need to be considered a victim. He has the power to liberate his mind in this position, and so do we. When we are in a suspended state, we have the power to liberate ourselves. Jung said, the patient must be alone if he is to find out what supports him when he cannot support himself. While this is a card and not a patient, he was talking about the hangman. The key is to show the person knows all the things are not always in an orderly fashion. We are always in flux, as is our self-realization. So, we don't always have everything that's like a duck in a row. We get, and people beginning their spiritual times wonder where to start. Start where it feels right. Start where you're pulled to. We are in flux. We all learn from different places. We all bring that wisdom together and we find out what it is that we need to know to make those things click together. This card is very important to remind us of that. So fate can bring us to a kind of crucifixion anytime and in many different ways. We may be crucified by a business that has a failure. We may have somebody betray us. We may be working for a cause that doesn't work out. We even might have an illness that knocks us down, at least temporarily. This can lead us to depression. It can lead us to spiritual impotence at the time. We feel like all is forsaken us, but we're being encouraged not to be considered the victim. We are being encouraged to take what it is we need to find out and plumb the depths of our soul, just like the hangman would. Many do not see that these times that we go through that are the hardest to go through are made so that we can make corrective measures so that we can meet our destiny in the way that we plan to meet it. Jung thought the hangman called for depth of being, believing seemingly impossible situations lead to new depths. We sometimes have somebody say, I don't know how you got through that. I don't know how you dealt with that. I don't know. You've seen it over and over again, and we've lived those ourselves. You don't have a choice. And when you don't have a choice, you have the ability to consider yourself a victim, or you have the ability to plow through it and get to the other side of it. Some therapists today are beginning to see that mental health or mental illness can be an instrument for us to heal. Any kind of depression we might have, any feelings of anxiety, they can be turned back into us in order to heal. But we must give consent of our heart and our soul. And the hangman can then sort of reunite with the divine and our own transpersonal selves beyond the personal. And it is commending our spirit to a power over our ego and turn to spiritual life beyond whatever dark night of the soul we may be undergo. So there's your hangman. Because this is the weekend that Jesus was on the cross, it was a good weekend to talk about this. This is a type of crucifixion. Obviously, there are those who could die on here if left on here forever. I think this is meant as a temporary pause. It's a temporary pause for us to get back to the roots of who we are and where we are in our lives. Thanks so much. Blessings to all of you. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.